Global Conflagration is an RTS with base building and modern unit combat with infantry, vehicles, helicopters and jets that looks and plays almost like a AAA game, despite being made by only two enthusiastic and talented indie developers with some help from freelance creators and passionate real-time strategy players. Its latest playable version showed a bunch of new stuff, like the short single-player introduction, diversified commander powers for each of the three asymmetrical factions, the system of garrisoning buildings, tougher AI to play against in skirmish, new units and their abilities, as well as many more things I will showcase to you in this video. What keeps drawing me back into Global Conflagration each time it has a demo or a playtest on Steam is exactly what most of us consider is at the heart of an enjoyable RTS game. Build a base, recruit lots of units, and blow up your enemy in spectacular combat. And this indie gem in the making fits that description perfectly. It also has some of the most requested features I often see fans of the genre ask from RTS game developers, such as unit veterancy leveling system, a compact UI menu for both building and recruitment, a replay system that is still a work in progress, as well as units firing from transports, and a waypoint system that also works on the minimap. The great one-liner callouts from units are just the cherry on top.
Engines rolling.
You start in Global Conflagration with an HQ building, some cash and a baseline income and power production. There is no builder unit, and you can only build new buildings in the green range of previous ones. This is on maps for up to 8 players in skirmish and multiplayer, but you can expect a very similar setup in the future single-player campaign. Additionally, you also start with a rifleman squad and a scout, which you send out to capture flags. Now these are no victory point flags, but capture points marked by flags, which produce a steady income for the player controlling them. There is a lot more to say about these, but we will come back to that. Next, you choose to build a power building followed by a vehicle bay and start producing vehicles. Or keep it simple and go with a barracks for recruiting infantry riflemen and rocket squads, along with highly mobile but unarmed scouts. While infantry might be slow and not particularly strong, it has the ability now to garrison buildings, which are sometimes neatly placed right next to capture points but not inside them. This lets them control most of the area while also leaving an opening for a single unit to stay out of their range and capture the flag right under their noses. Whichever opener you choose, the game design puts you on a path of immediate and map-wide conflict with the enemy, as your income depends on the number of flags you control. From this point onwards, you will be engrossed in small skirmishes, ambushes, base raids, airborne assaults and use of global measures on each other's units until the explosive and base-destroying end. These global measures are a type of commander's powers, which you can cast anywhere you have vision of, but they cost material, which is the third resource in this game, besides cash and power. It is generated by your HQ, power plants, and gained when you rescue injured personnel, which are sometimes left on the map after a battle. As you can see by now, Global Conflagration has a mix of many RTS game elements you might have enjoyed before in other similar games. And I would love to read in the comments which of these it reminds you most of, while you can use the link at the top right or down in the description to learn about more such upcoming RTS games. As I mentioned in the intro, each faction now has some unique global measures. The commander of the European Defensive Union faction, or EDU for short, has the Western Doctrine, which gives XP to units and levels them up, and they have access to paratroopers, which are dropped by a plane that comes off map. The spy satellite view it shares with the Carpathia faction, and cruise missile strike is available to all three factions. But there are plans to make this last global measure unique for each faction as well. The cruise missile strike can be used on both buildings and units, but from my experience, a precise strike on a bunch of closely packed units makes for a better use of it. When it comes to global measures unique to the Vanguard PMC faction, you can burn your enemies with the incendiary munitions, which engulf an area with an expanding circle of fire which deals damage over time. This faction can also use Compelling Advance and increase the speed of units by 50%. Its third unique global measure is dropping 2 BTR units down from a transport plane. If you pick the Carpathia faction, which I did for the most part during this latest demo, you get the mentioned Spy Satellite View, followed by the Vehicle Repair Drop and Artillery Strike. That last one is a bit harder to use precisely, but it deals considerable damage, while the Repair Drop is quite useful as the only other way to repair vehicles is to send them back into the range of a vehicle bay, taking them out of the fight for a while. These factions have a lot of unique units, most of which take inspiration from real-world military tech in use today, or those that are in development by nations around the world. Their base buildings might look similar, but their teching up paths differ, as do the types of upgrades they can give their units. This has allowed the developers to keep these factions very asymmetrical from the very beginning of the match to its end. While each faction does have an infantry, vehicle, helicopter, and airplane core, they all have units which fill these roles in a lot of different ways, complementing each other and giving you plenty of ways to play even within one faction. I will give you a lot of examples of both old and new units and their abilities later in the video, but do note abilities are tied to the use of the same resource the global measures use, so there is no ability spam in this game. Quite the opposite in fact. Using a unit ability is a very tactical choice, and committing to its use, you sacrifice the chance to use a more powerful global measure just when you might need it the most. You can see more combat gameplay in my previous showcases of this game using the playlist linked up here on the right and down in the description. Two features I didn't expect to see in this game, and both of which are implemented to decrease the volatility of early combat and let you have more units to cover the map, are scrap and unit price refund systems. Scrap refers to getting points after losing units, which are then spent as you recruit new units, and they shave off a few seconds from their build time. While units price refunds do exactly as the name would suggest. When you lose a unit, you receive a refund which starts at 40% of the unit price and goes down every 5 minutes until it is 10% for the rest of the match. As one of the developers explains himself, both act as some sort of reverse upkeep. Instead of punishing the winning player, they instead boost the losing player, aka the one losing units. So the player who did not lose units has to pay a premium for recruiting them. I must admit, I am still on the fence about these features, as the last demo simply didn't support enough players to have a level playing field and see the effectiveness of them. Too many of my 50 or so multiplayer matches were either against internal game testers with thousands of matches behind them, or against totally new players, meaning factors like knowledge of units, actions per minute, and skill played a much higher role in the outcome. This knowledge and skill gap is further expanded by the fact that there is a table of attack type versus armor type, which outlines which attack type deals more additional or less than normal damage to each armor type units have. This in itself isn't anything revolutionary in such games, but it also isn't something that overlaps with what simple logic might indicate considering the use of modern weapons and armor, and it isn't a topic you can easily learn about. In any event, these two systems of scrap and unit price refunds are meant to complement another very original concept related to the checkpoint or capture points, however you want to call them. This is the bounty system. It works by stacking an increasing cash bounty on a checkpoint type flag once you have captured it, and it can go up as high as 2000 cash. If you lose control over that flag and the enemy fully captures it, they instantly receive this bonus of 2000. So, if you overextend yourself on the map and are greedy for economy, you can end up boosting your opponent much more than yourself in the end. These checkpoints, marked by the flag icon on the minimap, also don't generate the same income as the logistic points you start off around your HQ, which are marked by circles themselves and whose income can be upgraded. So while logistic points allow you to boost income yourself, checkpoints see their income increased by increments as the match goes on. Lastly, there are Strongpoints, marked with an X sign, which don't offer any resources, but serve as a point to expand with an extra building queue by constructing a crane on them, or base buildings themselves by using another type of an upgrade. But before you can construct any such upgrade, you have to use an expansion unit on these flags, which is recruited in the HQ building itself. All of these outposts are targets for your enemy and can be easily destroyed by 2 or 3 units. This is where turrets come into play, and each faction has some type of a turret or even several of them depending on their use and firepower. Additionally, you can construct 2 types of turrets right on top of an outpost, but these are both cheap and weak. Turrets themselves are only slightly stronger, but can stop a weak attack on an outpost or at least give you more time to react to an attack, until an artillery unit shows up. What I have found the turrets most useful for is in fact base defense. Considering each faction can use some type of aircraft to flatten your buildings, a few turrets back at the base becomes a necessity. They are quite power hungry, so you have to also pay for more power plants once you choose this type of static defense. Another thing I should add here about power is that as soon as you go into the red, not only do your turrets shut down, but your unit production is also impaired. So these power plants become prime targets when attacking an enemy base, especially if you plan to send bombers in to destroy enemy buildings much faster. Before I go into specific units and their abilities, I want to mention the Veterancy leveling system. It is a feature I personally always love seeing in these kinds of games, despite some of the negative aspects this can introduce in the game. Thankfully, even with a 5th level and a star icon to their rank, veteran units in Global Conflagration aren't godly and won't change the tide of battle by themselves. I am not particularly sure which upgrades are in effect now for veteran units, but I know it used to be a bit more health, damage, and a bonus to fire rate and health regen in the previous versions of the game. When it comes to the brand new units, one of my personal favorites is the Chemical Trooper of the Carpathian faction, and in no small part due to nostalgic reasons of its GLA counterpart in Command & Conquer Generals. You might have noticed I have avoided directly comparing Global Conflagration and its features to other older games of the genre, despite doing so in the past and for other games I have showcased. This is particularly due to me noticing how nostalgia plays too big of a role on how new games are perceived and accepted by the audience, and because I would like players who are new to RTS games to feel like we old-timers and veterans aren't gatekeeping the genre a bit. So comparing these new games to the old ones we keep close to our hearts and look back on with pink glasses over our eyes isn't fair, and we tend to overlook the shortcomings of those older games to the detriment of new ones. Another reason I avoid these comparisons now as much as I can is that it stifles innovation and prevents new ideas from taking root and being allowed to grow through iterations, new content and patches. This prevents developers from exploring new approaches to gameplay, bringing new and unique features, or trying out new ideas. With that off my chest and out of the way, the Chemical Trooper is a really strong unit, which takes some upgrades to unlock and a lot of cash to train for an infantry unit. It not only melts enemy infantry, leaving a poisonous area of attack on the ground, but it also deals a lot of damage to vehicles and buildings. the most hilarious use of it being to spray enemy buildings from the Carpathia's fast and light helicopter, the Firefly, which can transport 2 infantry units at a time and let them both shoot from the inside. It becomes the perfect platform and combo for harassing enemy economies, blasting their outpost upgrades, taking over far-off flags, or even attacking power plants at the back of enemy bases. Its main nemesis are the fighter planes from the Edu and Vanguard PMC factions, Wyvern and Fulcrum, which both have anti-air missiles and can take out the small and agile helicopters, but also all the larger ones and even blimps. The bonus for the Vanguard fighter plane, Fulcrum, is its ground target bombing ability, which unfortunately works best only on stationary targets, while the Edu fighter, Wyvern, can be upgraded to deny enemy units vision range with an electronic countermeasures system. The real tank buster from the skies in Global Conflagration is actually the flimsy-looking Shepherd and its anti-tank missiles, which have much more range and are far more accurate, with explosives that don't just take out its target, but also other armored units in its immediate vicinity. All aircraft in this game are called in off-map, including Vanguard's powerful attack helicopter, and go out of the map once they exhaust their fuel or weapons. The control tower building is where you recruit them, and even if it gets destroyed, there are ways to keep the aircraft and not lose them with the tower. You can choose to attack such towers with your own bombers, like the insanely powerful White Swan of the Vanguard faction, which has a huge payload and destroys units and buildings indiscriminately, or the stealth bomber of the Edu faction, but the more stealthy approach is using the Spetsnaz sabotage ability. This lets them go invisible for a time until the unit reaches the target to drop explosives and take out a sizable chunk of the HP from a unit or building. They also have very powerful guns, which demolish not just enemy infantry, but deal considerable damage to enemy light vehicles. Their damage, however, pales in comparison to the automatic grenade launchers of the Edu's heavy infantry units, which obliterate infantry even faster and deal even more damage to vehicles. But as this is a game of hard counters, they too have their nemesis in basically any form of artillery, be that upgraded tanks with the missiles of the Vanguard faction, or Edu's long-range high-caliber artillery, or multiple rocket launcher systems of the Carpathia's artillery unit. The only weak point of artillery units is their inability to fire at close range, so you can literally ram units into them and destroy them while they cannot fire back. All infantry, in fact, is very vulnerable to such artillery units, even entrenched infantry units, which use their ability to set up defensive posts and exchange their mobility for more firepower and health points. Another very useful ability of infantry is healing, which is what the basic infantry unit of the Edu faction can do by dropping a medikit on the ground. This way, it can not only survive first encounters during the match, but keep their more powerful infantry units alive for longer. The Vanguard infantry unit, on the other hand, can place mines besides making those defensive posts, and those mines will blow up any vehicle sky high. Carpathia's infantry can sprint and get into range to leverage their higher damage output at close range. Another of my new favorites is the Edu's Skycopter drone unit and its stealthed loitering munitions ability. So while this drone has no direct offensive capability, it not only detects stealthed enemy units, but it can also launch this powerful small explosive drone to deal considerable damage. It will, however, die very quickly to any type of anti-air fire, be that rocket infantry unit or dedicated AA vehicle. These vehicles also easily deal with enemy helicopters and planes, but can themselves be targets, so it is a game of cat versus cat more than cat versus mouse. Other units, like the stealth tank of the Edu faction, are really interesting for sneak and ambush attacks, but also destroying outposts and running away before the enemy arrives in force. Particularly interesting is the toxic and explosive tank of the Carpathia faction, which slams on the gas, runs into enemy units, and doesn't just blow them up, but also poisons all nearby units. I used it to a great extent against several opponents, and while it can be annoying to use due to not having an attack move command, it is immensely satisfying when you use it right. There are many more fun and interesting units like these, with and without abilities and upgrades, and playing all three factions is the only way to enjoy them all. I managed to do so in the last demo, playing Global Conflagration almost exclusively for a week, as I can never get enough of it. Its latest version might be surpassing my own gaming capabilities in the sense of how fast you have to be to keep up with the best of the opponents, but it is undeniably fun to play even with those stinging strings of defeats, especially when you cool off after a 25-minute brutal match of constantly attacking a dozen flags and outposts, sending out planes and helicopter raids, while at the same time trying to keep your army from getting blown up by the enemy's commander's abilities. In the future, these developers want to have a map editor, modding support, an alternative resource mode with a harvester, and maybe some sort of alien insects wave co-op mode. But these are faraway goals, with early access being the short-term goal in 2024. A year full of new RTS, which I have showcased in my previous videos, linked here as cards on the screen. Thank you for watching and happy gaming!